The waiting is over. The speculation is through. JJ McCarthy's a Viking. Dallas Turner's a Viking. So much to break down on Locked On Vikings.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. Pretty easy today to learn something new because we learned about 2 new Vikings. The show's part of the Locked On Vikings podcast, your team every day. And thank you so much to my hashtag everydayers, those of you who have been with me each and every single day. I apologize that we didn't talk more about Dallas Turner, but there is a Patreon video you can find at patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. If you're new here, you're just trying to get your scoops on JJ McCarthy and Dallas Turner. We're going to talk about those guys. I'll let you know what I saw on tape of those guys at least. And you can, of course, find this show Mondays through Fridays, wherever you find your favorite podcasts, whether it's an app like SiriusXM or YouTube, or even Amazon Fire and Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app on those smart TVs. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So, it happened. JJ McCarthy, he's a Viking. He is the Vikings QB of the future, maybe even QB of the present, depending on how a camp competition goes. So here's going to be the plan for today's podcast. So we got 2 players to talk about, and likely nobody to talk about tomorrow, so I'm going to make sure we utilize that time as well. Here is the deal. Usually this is a Monday through Friday show. We're going to do a Saturday show. We're going to do a Sunday show. We're going to do a Monday show, and then I'm going to sleep for 2 days straight. So, because the draft always takes a lot out of me. So that's going to be where it is. It'll ultimately be the same amount of shows that you usually get. It'll just be that a couple of them are early because we'll have stuff to talk about. But probably nobody picked tomorrow, and I'm just going to use that extra time to get into a little bit more depth with everybody. So today I want to talk a little bit about value, trade value in particular. And we'll start there because the Vikings traded up a little bit for JJ McCarthy, not as much as we thought, and they traded up a little bit for Dallas Turner, which I don't think anybody saw coming. So they picked at 10th and 17th instead of 11 and 23. They gave up a whole bunch of mid-round capital this year and next year. And we, putting all that together and aggregating it into something that we can see as value and judge the value of is, worth discussing. And then we'll talk a little bit about those players and their situations. And then I think the nitty gritty film evaluation stuff, I think tomorrow I'm just going to watch a bunch of tape, sort of refresh myself, watch games I haven't watched of both of those guys yet. And, come back with a fresh eye and we can talk about that tomorrow. So that's the plan, I think. But okay. So trade value, first off, the way that the first round kind of fell was, I think there was one pretty big surprise that threw everybody for a loop, and that was Penix going at number 8 to the Atlanta Falcons. Some of you, a lot of you who comment had Penix going highly and were really high on Penix, and you're kind of validated by the fact that he went top 10, right? But I don't think anybody had that to the Falcons, who just paid a bunch of money to Kirk Cousins. By the way, did not inform him until they were on the clock, given his habits of not really keeping secrets. I kind of don't blame them, but he was apparently shocked and disappointed. The reports are crazy. It is weird in Atlanta right now. Be happy you are not in that situation because the vibes are not good. But Penix goes, and outside of that, everything went pretty chalk. Caleb Williams goes, Jaden Daniels goes, Drake May. It was reported by Tom Pelissero about an hour before the draft kicked off that the Patriots were going to stand pat and pick, that whatever trade negotiations had happened had not, that nobody came up to what they were asking for, whatever that was. We'll probably never know. So as much as, Drake May was kind of the situation that I think of the realistic situations that were possible, that was the one that got me the most hyped. Okay. Patriots said, no, that's that. So now we're kind of on JJ McCarthy watch. We were live at the Minnesota football party for the entire draft. It was like a 2-hour live stream. So we watched the whole thing, reacted to the whole thing. You can see my live reaction to finding out that Penix was a Falcon and being incredulous, thinking there's no way this is the real Jordan Schultz. But as we sort of sat through and started sweating it out, okay, is anybody going to trade up with Arizona? No, they take Marvin Harrison. Anybody going to trade up with the Chargers? Nope, they're just taking Joe Alt. Anybody? What about the Giants? Are they going to take it? And so here's the deal. When it came to trading up, I was pretty wrong. I was pretty egregiously wrong. I really thought that the Vikings were going to have to shell way out to get J.J. McCarthy. They were going to have to leapfrog the Giants. They were going to have to outbid, the Broncos and maybe the Raiders or somebody else. Like, I really thought J.J. McCarthy was never going to make it past pick 6. And I fell for it. That's really the mistake here, is that the Giants put out a pretty large-scale media campaign that they were like at the combine. They had buyer's remorse with Daniel Jones, and that they don't want to continue forward with him, and that they're looking at the quarterbacks. They did a ton of the quarterbacks. They met with J.J. McCarthy himself a ton, and he even like said that on NFL Network. He was like, "Yeah, I spent a bunch of time with the Giants." Like, they did it in very coordinated campaign, and it turned out to 100% be lies. Not just that, they just like chose Malik Neighbors over these quarterbacks. No, Ian Rappaport tweeted out like, yep, it was all a bluff. All 100% a bluff. Got me good. Fair enough, Giants. You got me. You didn't get Kwesi, though, because Kwesi didn't trade up, and that is what the Giants wanted. They wanted one of those teams, Arizona or Los Angeles, to trade down with somebody who wanted a QB, whether it was Minnesota or someone else. They wanted to be able to, I think they actually maybe were a little interested in May. I don't know if that was actually fake. But regardless, Patriots said no. But the Giants wanted someone to leapfrog them, take a QB, and push wide receivers down the board, right? The dream scenario for the Giants is the one where they trade up, where the Vikings trade up with Arizona, and maybe, the Chargers probably take Marvin Harrison, but it gives them a chance at Marvin Harrison, right? If the Chargers still take Joe Alt, then maybe they can get Marvin Harrison. That's what they were trying to do with all that. And they got your friendly neighborhood podcaster very good. So there you go. That's what happens in the draft, though. That's part of the fun of it, right? What's a lie, what's not. But then once McCarthy fell past the Giants, then you start thinking, are they even going to have to trade up at all? Right? Titans stick and pick. The Falcons do their thing. That's really interesting. There was actually a report that came out after the draft that like a bunch of teams tried to get up for Penix, the Seahawks, the Raiders. I'm trying to think like, man, if like the Titans ticker turned black and it said Raiders, my heart would have leapt out of my chest, and then they would have taken Penix, and I would have been like, whoa. Like, if that would have happened, the emotional roller coaster of that, I think, would have knocked me clean out. But none of that happened. The Falcons take Penix. Everybody's like, wait, what? What? You have Cousins? What are you doing? Not my problem. Go listen to Aaron Freeman on Locked On Falcons. That's a must listen. You have to listen to that show. That's going to be phenomenal. I know I will. And then you get the Bears at 9. They could have traded down with the Raiders, and I mean, they probably weren't going to set the Vikings up with their QB. So that was like maybe the best chance that somebody had to leapfrog them, but they said, nope, we're sticking and picking as well. Jets up at 10. Somebody must have been negotiating with the Vikings, or at least the Vikings had to think somebody was negotiating with them. They could have just gotten a call from the Jets that said, hey, we took a call from the Raiders. Do you want to outbid it? Without, it could have been a total lie, but either way, the Vikings did that. So they trade a 4th and a 5th rounder and pick 11 for pick 10 and a 6th rounder. Pick 203, I think is what it is. So that's, arranging some day 3 picks, right? 4th and 5th, I mean, that's not nothing. 4th and 5th is absolutely not nothing. Getting the 6th back is also not nothing. So they give up a little bit. But when we were kind of going into things thinking, man, they might have to give up 11 and 23 and maybe a 2025 first just to get them. That's what I did on the Locked On Mock Draft. I gave up all 3 first-round picks. I got something back. I got a 3rd rounder this year back, which actually I was pretty happy with. I thought I did good there, but it turned out I did way more than I had to get him. So Kwesi outdid me. That's probably why I don't get paid to be a GM. And J.J. McCarthy is a Viking. So now we have the question of the value of that trade. Did they overpay or whatever? They did overpay, and I'll talk a little bit more about it. But, when you factor in that it's for a quarterback, that's pretty normal. It's to be expected. And then the next trade up, which is for Dallas Turner and sort of the logic behind that, that'll be next. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs knows that if you run a small business or if you hire for whatever your business is, that you have a lot going on and that you can't exactly dedicate every single second of your day to hiring. That's why they want to really help you out by giving you access to a gigantic pool of candidates. But it's not just a vanilla job board. It is a place that helps you through the entire process with things like a job description, like assist tool that'll like help you write them, and screening questions that help you narrow down that giant pool of applicants. There is a reason that 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring, and 86% of those small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode of your favorite Locked On podcast is brought to you by the best meal kit service in the game, Home Chef. No more having to answer the dreaded question, what are we going to do for dinner tonight? Thanks to Home Chef and their chef-designed recipes that are delivered directly to my door, all pre-packaged, pre-portioned. They even peel the garlic cloves for you. And each recipe, one of my favorites, blackened mahi, comes with a full page of easy-to-read instructions that include customization options and pictures to guide you along the way through the step-by-step process so you don't have to ask, is that what chard looks like? I cannot recommend Home Chef enough, especially right now, because for a limited time, Home Chef is giving Locked On listeners 18 free meals, free dessert for life, and of course, free shipping on your first box if you head to homechef.com/lockedon today. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 18 free meals and free dessert for life. Yes, you heard that right. Homechef.com/lockedon. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert.
Thanks a bunch for coming to Locked On Vikings as your first listen each and every day, especially on days like today when we have such big news to talk about, which is these trades and JJ McCarthy and Dallas Turner. Boy, the fact that they got Dallas Turner is, I don't think, something a lot of people had on their bingo cards. On the morning of the draft, Thursday morning, Daniel Jeremiah posted a mock draft that had JJ McCarthy just falling clean to 11, no trade up, and getting picked by the Vikings there. And then at 23, they took Chop Robinson. Now, if you're an everydayer, you know Chop Robinson is my guy. I love Chop Robinson. He was edge one to me. That's a hot take. Bite me. I don't care if you don't agree with it. I love him that much. I had Dallas Turner third behind Latu, but I like him a lot. Like that's not shade. And I'll talk more about kind of how I feel about him. I did do a Patreon video, so you can go to patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL and get a quick breakdown of leverage. That's really what I was focusing on with him. But my D-line stuff was more focused on learning the position and, kind of showcasing certain facets of D-line play than just like being this holistic evaluation of everything that a guy does necessarily. So I kind of want to do one that's like, no, okay, now we picked him. Now here's everything Dallas that I think about Dallas Turner, like really just kind of dump the brain. So that should hopefully come up. I'm going out of town, early next month. So we'll see if I get it done or if you have to wait till after in May and stuff, but I'll get around to it. Anyways, if you are looking for round-the-clock coverage of this draft and everything going on in Minnesota sports, wild time in Minnesota sports, the Twins season is off to a pretty bad start, I think. I don't know. You tell me. I don't watch baseball. The Timberwolves winning in the playoffs, looking to advance maybe for the first time since 2004. Phenomenal stuff there. You can get all of the discussion and much, much more at the Locked On Minnesota Sports Today 24/7 live stream. Just flick that thing on in the background and forget about it and bombard your brain with all things Minnesota sports all day long. So let's talk about the actual trades here and the true value of them. And we'll start with, so it's weird to talk about the JJ McCarthy pick. But I guess the trade to 23 that the Vikings made with the Texans didn't ultimately have anything to do with JJ McCarthy, because JJ McCarthy was just what they only moved up one spot for him, and they gave up picks 129, which was the Detroit Lions 4th rounder that came back to us in the TJ Hawkinson trade, and 157, which I believe was the 5th round pick that they got from trading Zadarius Smith to the Browns last year, or one of the 5th rounders. They got 2 5th rounders for Zadarius Smith. And then they got pick 203 back, which is a 6th rounder. So they overpaid. If you plug that into all of the trade calculators, and it doesn't matter if you use the Jimmy Johnson chart, the over the cap chart, the PFF chart, the Rich Hill chart, which is like, I think the best one for evaluating like how you did against how other teams historically did when they're making similar moves. For example, like I think the Tristan Wirfs trade in 2020 was, I think, 10-9 or something similar like that. The Vikings paid more than teams historically pay to do this. And this is a pattern with Kwesi at this point. Kwesi overpays to move down. He overpays to move up. He doesn't get value the way that the charts say that you should get value. And I think that it's probably fair to just say, all right, that is just a weakness of his. That's not a thing. He does not eke the value in the same way that Rick Spielman does. You're just not going to get as much in trades, and he likes to trade. But what's interesting about that is in his background, he did a lot of work when he was with the 49ers and later the Browns, I think, in like valuing draft picks, finding value or trying to like define the value of a draft pick. So he's come away with like just being super okay with bleeding value. Now, the other thing about this is, where are these guys on the board, right? When it comes to Dallas Turner, who we'll get to his trade later, if you think you're getting like the 8th player on the board, you're going to be totally fine to pay a little more than what it usually costs to get up to 17. If you pay what it would usually cost to get up to 13 and you get the 8th player, you're still coming out ahead in that transaction, and the other team's very happy too, and the deal gets done. We're all happy. But with this trade, it's more about it being a quarterback. You're just going to trade a little bit more to get a quarterback. And ultimately, this is the logic, but on a like way easier sell. But it's the same logic as I always said for trading up for Drake May when it was going to be ridiculously expensive, which is, yeah, it's going to be kind of sad to lose all those picks and to not be as excited on draft day for those years. But if the quarterback works out and he's your franchise guy and he leads you to great success for years and years and years, you aren't going to care. It washes out that value. Or maybe a more quantity way to put it is the value between this quarterback and that quarterback, right? Between, just like the differences in quality between the quarterbacks. And the value in the difference in quality between a good quarterback and a bad quarterback is just going to blow out the value of a draft pick like tenfold. It's just going to destroy it, right? Especially when you're talking about 4th and 5th. Like, yeah, if Kwesi drove a little bit of a harder bargain, maybe he could have saved a 5th round pick. Maybe he could have done it for a 4th for a 6th, right? Or something like that. But whatever, they got their quarterback. And I like JJ McCarthy a lot. I've talked about him a lot on this show. I'm going to save the nitty gritty film stuff for tomorrow. So come on back tomorrow. But I like JJ McCarthy. So for me, I think it's important to acknowledge and point out they kind of got a bad deal here, but whatever, say it. And then it's over. And now let's just, okay, they drafted JJ McCarthy. And they maybe wouldn't have even had to, right? If they picked him at 11 and we were just talking about JJ McCarthy, that honestly wouldn't be that different of a situation. Obviously, if the Jets traded down with the Raiders and the Raiders got him and oh no, right, or the Broncos, then, it's a way different situation. And preventing that, probably worth paying a little bit extra. But what really throws a wrench into this whole engine is that trade to 23 that they didn't end up using on a quarterback. The rationale for taking an inefficient deal, a 2nd this year and next year, is not worth a late 1st. You lost value there. So you bled value there. You bled value trading up to JJ. You bled value trading up for Dallas Turner. You're bleeding a lot of value. And if you put all that value together, which some of the like nerds did, and I'm just going to trust them, it adds up to like a mid 1st round pick worth. If you go by like the analytics based chart, the over the cap, which is based on like the money that draft picks earn, both by rookie wage scale and also by like their likelihood of making the team and continuing to earn money. And the value of, or like the PFF chart, which is based in like wins above replacement and like more advanced math and stuff. And I think there's a similar one from Ben Baldwin that's like based in EPA. Like The Jimmy Johnson chart, not that mad at us. But the Jimmy Johnson chart stinks. It's really dumb, and you shouldn't use it anymore. You should use a smarter trade. Jimmy Johnson came up with the format, or at least popularized it, and that's we like that for him, but the numbers on it are bad, and you shouldn't use them. So the more advanced the chart is, the more motivated the math behind it is, the more it hates the Vikings trades. This should not be the headline, so I'm getting it out of the way right now. But Kwesi bled a lot of value. These were not good deals. They were maybe worth it, but they were not well negotiated by basically all history and data that we have. And the response to that isn't to say, well, actually, here's why it was a good deal. It's to say, yeah, it was bad, but how much do we care? I don't know if I care that much. So let's talk about the specifics next of the Dallas Turner trade and how that kind of plays into that trade up to 23 and kind of how we got ourselves to that position of not great value, but who cares? We got maybe a top 10 player on the whole board. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Monopoly Go. The classic board game from your childhood is back with a mobile twist. You can do all of the same nefarious tactics that destroyed your friendships and got you in fights with your siblings. That's what you love Monopoly for. Don't lie to me. You absolutely love that you could decline them on deals and betray everybody's trust. That's beautiful and fun. But you can also now just like rob your friend. You just straight up do a heist on them, heist their vault and just take money. It rocks. You can also wreck everything they have with a wrecking ball, like a literal wrecking ball. So this is like a souped up, edgy version of the board game that you know and love. Comes in all the different fun like versions and skins that Monopoly has become famous for. You know, like there's the moon version and there's the crazy, there's like the Vegas version. All of those other Monopoly boards. But whatever your favorite part is, go get yourself set up. Download Monopoly Go, which you can find free on the App Store and Google Play. Moving right along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. So at pick 17, the Vikings picked Dallas Turner, edge rusher out of Alabama, and that pick originally was pick 42. So over the course of the offseason, the Vikings moved that thing from 42 to 23 to 17 and got a consensus, I'll say, top 10 player. Will he turn out to be a top 10 player in the draft? Nobody ever knows. But a lot of people like him more than I do, and I certainly don't hate the guy. The people are like calling it the steal of the draft. But again, we bled a whole bunch of value, which takes a little bit of the temper away from it. And it's like, I'm glad I can just kind of talk about it now and then never talk about it again and just only talk about how Dallas Turner is, which is probably going to be my plan here. But here's the actual details. So the Vikings gave up pick 23, pick 167, which I believe was their natural 5th rounder, and then a 3rd and 4th rounder next year, wherever those end up. So that's in total 4 draft picks, and they get back pick 17 and use it on Dallas Turner. Jacksonville took, I think, Brian Thomas with pick 23. He fell to them there. And I think they're actually really happy with that. I think they probably would have taken him at 17 if I'm reading the Jacksonville media right. But that's not the only cost it took to get 42 up there, right? It also cost a 2nd rounder this year and a 2nd rounder next year. So overall, to get Dallas Turner, the Vikings spent a 2nd rounder this year, a 5th rounder this year, and 2nd, 3rd, and 4th next year. They spent 5 draft picks on one guy. That's kind of crazy. And then I think they had like there was like a 7-6 swap in there between them and the Texans that I don't really care about. That's a lot for one guy. So the reason that they overpaid, and again, this was the Cope we said, was that one was for a quarterback, right? To get up to pick 23, that was for a QB. So of course they're going to pay more. It's just like the JJ McCarthy trade. But now that it is not for a QB, now that turned out to be for an edge rusher, you just kind of bled a bunch of value. Now, again, here's the deal. Kwesi's not Rick. Rick Spielman was a GM for 20 years. He was a GM before he got to Minnesota. He was a sort of halfway pseudo GM back in the Triangle of Authority days. And by the time he was actually calling the shots, he had a ton of experience. at managing the team, not just being a scout, not just being, part of a cog in the machine, not just being the cap guy or whatever, but actually making the decisions of who to cut, who to trade for, who to acquire, what to pay them, all of that. He had experience. And so this stuff wouldn't happen as much to him because he had experience negotiating in the market. Kwesi doesn't. And there's only really one way to fix that problem. It's either, I guess there's two ways. One is to wait. He will gain that experience, right? If he paid too much, he'll learn from that, right? I don't think Kwesi's going to be very happy with the efficiency of this trade. He's probably really happy with the result. They're very stoked to get Dallas Turner. I am too. But just in terms of the cost, I would bet anything that Kwesi's going, yeah, we overpaid for that one. We could have maneuvered that, navigated that situation better, to set ourselves up to still get Dallas Turner because he was falling, but maybe not pay as much if we had, handled that situation a little bit differently. I should mention Adam Schefter said a couple of weeks ago that Houston trade, that Houston initiated that, not the Vikings, because they were trying to get an extra second rounder to complete the Diggs trade. I kind of still don't buy that. And the Vikings were essentially trying to put together a package that would have gone to the Patriots for Drake May. That fell through, and then they were just sort of stuck with this. It's like getting stuck with a timeshare. It's like this just overly expensive asset that you only really wanted for one reason, and now that reason is not possible, and you're going to turn it into something else, and maneuvering into that, you've got to pay even more. And it's like the only way out was to just like overpay again. So I don't think that was particularly expertly navigated, but the result is, while overly expensive, really, really cool. I like Dallas Turner. I haven't talked about him nearly enough on this podcast. I'll give you a little bit of a taste. He is a leverage winner. That's the key thing I think you should understand about Dallas Turner is leverage. He's a smaller player, extraordinarily athletic, tested phenomenally, but smaller. That means that he is got to win a lot of reps against people who are a lot bigger than him in the SEC, where there's good tackles. I mean, he went up against, in practice every day, he went up against the 7th overall pick, J.C. Latham, right? Like, this is good competition. So to win, you have to get leverage. Your leverage, what you're looking for when you're looking for leverage, is, I'll call it angle of power. Spine angle, you'll hear a little bit. Some people say pad level, but that's a little bit out of favor because, like, if you tell someone, get your pad level down, they're just going to bend over it. Like, you're not like, it bends you over at the waist. If you're just trying to get your shoulders down, you're trying to sink, you're trying to get better leverage and a better kind of build your house better. But if you're a smaller player and you can get underneath the other player, if you can get your spine angle to enact on them, where they are, they're not meeting you like you're pushing two playing cards together. If you're meeting them, your head going, your face mask going into their chest, and you have your build properly set up, you have that good spine angle, all you got to do is drive your feet and you can win the rep. And you can see him blow guys back all the time. You can see him set the edge that way. You can see him explode pullers that way. You can see him win in the pass rush that way. And then sometimes that guy's just too strong and he just kind of gets walled off. And, you get the leverage, you can drive your feet, you do everything you can, and you still just kind of don't quite have enough muscle. That's the downside there. He's an extraordinarily smart player. He knows what he's looking at. He knows how to read things. He knows how to do a pull key. He reads and reacts quickly. That's really important, right? That's the kind of thing that, will get you on the field right away. And people are excited enough about him to say that he could end up being the premier edge rusher on the Vikings kind of right out the gate. That's always a hard expectation for a rookie. I would temper it a little bit. But it gives, like, for a guy that complained a lot about the D-line room over the last couple of months, it puts my soul at ease a little bit. Okay, they've got a guy that's supposed to be the guy, and maybe we have to be a little patient. It'll take a little bit for him to get there. It always does with rookies. That's fine by me. They've got a plan for who the guy's going to be. They didn't just let Danielle Hunter go and try to moneyball it with a bunch of dudes. They've got, he's not just a guy. He could be the guy. And that's what I was really looking for. That's what I would have loved from this draft. But ultimately, my expectation going in was that they'd kind of have to spend everything on a quarterback and we wouldn't really have anybody else to talk about. But they didn't. They actually played that board pretty well, I think. Even though we're nitpicking and saying they overpaid for this or that, They played the board better than I expected them to be able to. I expected them to have to go up to 4 or 5. They didn't, and they still got the guy I thought you'd be taking up there. So on the whole, I'm really happy. I love it. I've been really nitpicky here, but sometimes I do that. And that doesn't mean that I don't like the thing on the whole. I like it. It's a good day. I'm very happy. I'm going to rest very easy tonight. Well, probably not because I'm filled with adrenaline and stress. The draft is a lot. And as we go in tomorrow, we'll circle back to both these guys tomorrow. I'll probably spend like 2/3 of the show on JJ McCarthy and then the last bit on Dallas Turner. And we can talk about these guys and their ins and outs a little bit. And then Saturday will be day 3 and my whole brain will melt out of my ears and you get to listen to whatever's left. Enjoy that. I'll see you tomorrow. And as always, Skol.